This morning, I was just sitting on my porch, sipping coffee like I do every Saturday. Peaceful, quiet. Then the doorbell rang. It was my son, Travis. He hadn't visited in 2 years. Last time, he gave me $50 and told me to leave my own house. Today, he dropped a folder on my kitchen table and said, "Sign this, or I'll take you to court and prove you're mentally unfit." My hands trembled, but not with fear. I had already hidden a copy of my wife's real will, the one that cut him out completely. So I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Are you sure you want to play this game with me, son? And if you think that was the twist, wait until you see who was secretly recording the whole conversation. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I know how far my truth is reaching." 70. That number didn't feel real when I looked at the mirror that morning. I still woke up early, still brewed my own coffee, still pulled weeds from the front yard without help, but birthdays stopped feeling like milestones a long time ago, especially this one. I thought it'd be a quiet day. Maybe Travis would call, maybe he wouldn't. That part didn't sting as much anymore, so when I opened the front door and saw balloons tied to the porch railing and the aroma of grilled meat wafting from the backyard, my first reaction wasn't joy, it was suspicion. The yard was full of people. Some I vaguely recognized, others I didn't know at all. My son, Travis, walked over with that big grin of his, the one he used to flash as a boy when he wanted something. "Happy birthday, Dad," he said, clapping a hand on my back. "You deserve this." It should have felt good, but something in the way his eyes darted toward the patio made my stomach twist. He was whispering with a couple in suits. People I'd never seen in my life. I caught fragments of conversation, terms like transfer and finalized. I smiled like a good old man, nodded at people I hadn't seen since Lorraine's funeral, said thank you more than I meant it. The music was too loud, the food tasted hollow, and my own house felt unfamiliar. After the cake, Travis motioned me toward the garage. "Got something for you," he said, slipping in before I could answer. Inside the garage, it was quiet. The stale smell of motor oil and paint cans brought a weird comfort. I leaned against the workbench, waiting. Travis reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white envelope. "It's time for a new chapter, Dad." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He handed me the envelope. $50 for a fresh start. I looked at it like he'd handed me a joke on a napkin. He continued, avoiding my eyes. "You've done your part. It's time for space, independence. I've got the house now. It's better this way, for everyone." My hands started shaking. I tried to remember when I signed anything, after Lorraine passed. Maybe the estate paperwork. I didn't read every line. Trusted him. "You're saying I have to leave," I said, my voice lower than I expected. "It's already done," he replied. "I need this place for my family. You'll be fine." There were no raised voices, no accusations, just facts, laid bare like a corpse on a metal table. I walked out of the garage holding that damned envelope. The party was still going, laughter bouncing off the fence like echoes from someone else's life. Travis didn't walk me out. No one did. I passed the guests. They averted their eyes. No one asked if I needed help. No one even noticed I was carrying nothing. Not a suitcase, not a box. Just $50 and a busted-up heart. The sun was dipping low when I reached the curb. I sat on the cold bench at the bus stop and stared back at the house that used to be mine, that used to be Lorraine's, somewhere deep in me. I imagined her standing at the window, shaking her head, not with surprise, but disappointment. I didn't cry, didn't curse, didn't plead, just stared ahead and whispered to the wind. "You'll regret underestimating an old man." I didn't know it yet, but that $50 was going to cost him everything. The rain hadn't let up. It followed me from the moment I stepped off that last bus like it had something personal to say. My coat, cheap polyester and years too old, soaked through before I could ring Russell's doorbell. The porch light flickered once, then twice, like it had to think about whether I deserved to be seen. He opened the door slower than I remembered him moving. Then again, I hadn't seen Russell in nearly 10 years, since Lorraine's funeral. His beard was whiter now, his shoulders a little more hunched. But his eyes, those were the same, sharp, unreadable. "Weldon?" he asked, like he wasn't sure if it was me or a ghost. I gave him a weak nod. "I just need a few nights. Just a place to think." He didn't ask questions. That's the kind of man Russell had always been. Army taught us how to hold silence better than any rifle. He led me downstairs to the basement. The place smelled like mildew and something that reminded me of rusted tools. He pointed to a cot in the corner, a folded wool blanket on top. "Bathrooms upstairs. You remember the way." I did, and that was that. The basement was darker than I remembered it. Boxes lined the walls, old holiday decorations and broken appliances piled high. I dropped my wet coat on the end of the cot and sat down. My bones ached in places I'd forgotten existed. There was no dinner waiting, no Lorraine in the kitchen humming old country songs while stirring stew. Just me, a plastic bag from the corner store, and a 39-cent packet of ramen noodles. I boiled water on a hot plate Russell had plugged in for me, and tried to pretend the smell didn't make my stomach twist in shame. The first bite burned my mouth. The second didn't taste like anything. I chewed in silence, staring at the $50 still in the envelope on the corner of the folding table. I hadn't even opened it since that night. Part of me still hoped it was a bad joke. Maybe Travis had tucked in a key to the house, a letter, anything that would explain what the hell had happened. But it wasn't a joke, not anymore. That night, I didn't sleep so much as fall into something heavier, the kind of sleep where the body rests but the soul tosses and turns. I saw Lorraine. She was standing in our old garden, the one with the chipped birdbath and roses she used to sing to. Her hands were covered in dirt, her smile tight. "Don't let him take what's ours," she said. Not angry, not sad, just clear. When I opened my eyes, the basement was still dark, but my mind wasn't. I sat up, legs trembling against the cold cement floor, and pulled out a dusty notepad from my duffel. I made a list. What I have: 1 coat, 1 cot, $50, Russell. What I lost: my house, my son, my place. What I need: a plan. A name came to me: Nadine Carlton, one of Lorraine's friends. A quiet woman with smart eyes and a sharper mouth. I hadn't seen her since the funeral, but something told me she'd remember. I circled her name twice, just after sunrise. I bundled up again and left Russell a note. I didn't want him worrying. Not that he would. It was a 2-mile walk to the old family house Lorraine had grown up in. We'd kept it after her mother passed. Never rented it out. It sat at the edge of Detroit's west side, barely clinging to the border of the suburbs. The house was still there, barely. Boarded windows, peeling paint, weeds that could swallow a child whole. But she'd loved that place once, and it still had the heart she gave it. The porch steps creaked like old men gossiping. I reached under the third planter, still there, still cracked, and pulled out the rusted key. My hand hesitated at the lock. I wasn't sure if I was breaking in or coming home. Inside, it was dust and silence, the kind that wraps around you, makes your breath feel too loud. But it was mine, ours. "We'll start here, girl," I whispered to the empty room, just loud enough for the walls to remember us. I pulled out the notebook again, scribbled notes on repairs, what needed fixing, who I could call. My handwriting looked shaky, older than I remembered it being, but the resolve behind it, solid as hell. I had just stepped outside to look for a nearby corner store, maybe grab coffee and see if the old gas station still sold canned soup, when I saw him, man in a suit. Dark hair, clipboard, eyes scanning the front of the house like it was a property he already owned. He turned as I walked down the steps. "Are you Mr. Menendez?" Something clicked. Too clean, too prepared. Maybe a bank rep, maybe worse. I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "He's not here anymore." He studied me a moment longer, then made a note and walked away. But I followed him, quiet, from across the street. The sun hadn't even cleared the rooftops when I spotted the man again. He was still out there, gray suit, polished shoes, clipboard under one arm, and a coffee cup in the other. From the other side of the street, I stayed still behind a dying bush in the front yard of the neighbor's house. It was chilly, but I didn't feel the cold. I only felt a quiet, seething fire. He circled the porch like he owned it, checking siding and windows, tapping notes into a phone. Then he pulled out a thick stack of papers from the clipboard, flipping through them with a sigh, clearly rehearsing something in his head. One sheet caught the light just enough, bold letters in red. Potential offer. Pending owner approval. I ducked lower. This was no random guy from the city doing an inspection. He was preparing a sale. My house, Lorraine's house, and suddenly, every word from Travis started rearranging themselves in my memory, like pieces of a puzzle I never asked to solve. I waited until he drove off before I crossed the street again. My feet felt like concrete, but I forced them toward the sidewalk. No more guessing, no more shadows. It was time to pull things into the light. The county clerk's office sat across from an old sandwich shop that used to be Lorraine's favorite. We'd come here every spring for pastrami melts when the daffodils bloomed. But that morning, nothing smelled like spring. Just stale printer ink and cold linoleum. The clerk behind the counter was a young woman with a soft voice and tired eyes. She typed my address into her terminal with long, red fingernails and frowned as the screen loaded. "Looks like this title was transferred 2 months ago," she said, tilting the screen toward me. "New owner listed is Travis Menendez." Her voice softened when she looked up. "That's your son?" I nodded slowly. There must be a mistake. She printed the record anyway. I held the paper in both hands, reading the legalese that turned Lorraine's kitchen and my living room into bullet points and parcel numbers. There was even a notarized signature beside mine, but I never remembered signing it. A hollow thud echoed in my chest, and in that moment, the past came rushing back. It was the week after Lorraine died. I hadn't even picked out her headstone yet. Travis had come by with a casserole and a man in a collared shirt who he said was helping with estate stuff. He talked fast, using words like probate and asset shielding. I'd barely listened. Grief makes you stupid like that. All I remember now was a pen in my hand, Travis's steady tone, and that man smiling too wide for a Tuesday morning. The notary's name was Greg Summers. I remembered because I'd joked about how it sounded like a weatherman, but Greg never asked me anything. He didn't even look me in the eye. He just pointed to the signature line and said, "We're all set, sir." All set to get me out of my own life. Russell was already at the table when I got back. The scent of chili beans simmering on the stove filled the kitchen. For a second, it felt like I'd walked into one of those evenings from before Lorraine got sick. But it was different now, sharper, angrier. I slid the paper across the table. He sold me out. Russell read every word before folding it back and setting it down gently, like it was a loaded gun. "I know someone. Nadine Carlton. She was close with Lorraine." "Yeah?" I nodded. "Haven't seen her in 20 years. She became a paralegal. Last I heard, she works for some firm downtown. Might be worth talking to." I barely had time to process that when my phone rang, number unknown. I answered, expecting a robocall. Instead, a smooth voice cut through. "Mr. Menendez?" the man said. "This is Mr. Salinger with Ridgeline Realty. We'll be showing the property this Saturday at noon. Please do not interfere with the viewing process." I stood frozen, phone still at my ear, even after the call ended. Salinger. So that's his name. His voice was too clean, like he never had to earn anything. "They're already setting up showings," I told Russell. His knuckles whitened around the spoon. "Then you'd better move fast." That night, I walked back to the house alone. The lights of the neighborhood flickered as I passed shuttered homes and overgrown yards. My boots crunched over wet gravel until I reached the porch. Inside, the silence wrapped around me like a shroud. I walked to the fireplace, the same one I'd sat in front of with Lorraine when the boys were still little. I reached up behind the mantel, fingers brushing dust and grit until they found the latch. The drawer slid open with a soft groan. Inside was an old manila folder. It smelled like cedar and thyme. I opened it carefully. There, in Lorraine's handwriting, still graceful, still steady, was her will. The one Travis swore didn't exist. The one I had buried away in grief and forgot until tonight. I ran my hand over her signature. Then I whispered, "You're not the only one who knows how to play dirty, son." The strip mall where Nadine worked sat between a payday loan place and a faded laundromat. Her legal co-op had no name on the glass door, just a peeling decal that read, "Community Advocacy Services." But when she opened the door and saw me, it felt like stepping into a familiar place after too many years wandering. "Weldon Ray?" She blinked. "Is that really you?" "Last I checked." I smiled faintly. "You got time for an old man with a mess?" She didn't hesitate. "Come in." The office smelled of dust and cheap coffee, with boxes stacked neatly along the walls. She cleared a chair for me, and I handed her the folder, Lorraine's will, the deed transfer papers, the county records. "You're not here for a social visit," she said, scanning the first page. "No," I said, "and I wish I was." She nodded slowly and adjusted her glasses. There was a pause, heavy and electric. As she flipped through the documents, the rain started up again outside, tapping softly against the glass. I sat quiet, watching her eyes narrow. Then she muttered, "Damn it." "What?" "This isn't just wrong. This is criminal." Nadine pulled a portable magnifier from her drawer and examined the deed transfer page. "See this ink?" she said. "This part's written in newer ink than the date stamp." She pointed out inconsistencies in the notary signature, then tapped a number printed beside it. "This license expired last year, and the stamp says the transfer was notarized 2 years ago." I clenched my jaw. So Travis used a dead notary? Or a friend who didn't renew their license? Either way, it's invalid. She sat back and blew out a breath. "This wasn't just shady, it was calculated. And from what I see, you never signed this in good faith." "I bet my lunch money that signature isn't yours. Can we prove it?" "I can get a report started. And we're going to draft something stronger than a polite letter." Her voice was calm, but there was fire underneath it. "I'll get someone to co-sign from my old firm. We're going to put a legal wall up. Fast." By the time the sky started turning purple outside, Nadine had already typed out a formal cease and desist letter. The tone was sharp, almost surgical. I sat beside her, watching the words pile up on the screen like bricks in a wall I'd forgotten I could build. "We cite Lorraine's will," she explained, "and the fraud in the deed transfer. It won't fix everything overnight, but it stops them from showing or selling the property. For now." I looked over the last line of the letter. "You are hereby instructed to halt all proceedings related to the property at 221 Jasper Street, effective immediately, pending legal review and potential criminal investigation." She handed me a pen. I stared at it longer than I should have. "I haven't signed anything in a while," I murmured. "Take your time," she said gently, with one slow motion. I signed. Let's see if he still wants to move in now. Back home, or what passed for it now, I tossed my coat over the rusted chair by the fireplace. The letter, now sealed and copied, sat on the mantel beside Lorraine's will. The house creaked in the wind like it was listening. I sat in silence, the flicker of memory creeping in like an old friend. Travis had been maybe 7 when he fell on the sidewalk out front, scraped his knee raw. I'd scooped him up and carried him inside, blood on my sleeve, tears soaking my collar. I remembered Lorraine wiping his face while I held him close. Now I couldn't stop thinking. I never imagined I'd need protection from that same boy. I placed the letter down gently. My fingers brushed the edge of Lorraine's will. "Don't worry," I whispered. "They won't erase you." I turned off the lights, let the shadows settle in around me. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. No caller ID, just a single message. "Your little lawyer trick won't stop this. You'll regret interfering." I stared at it a long time. No panic, no fear, just confirmation. Then I looked up and whispered, "Then I guess we're just getting started." The drive to Royal Oak was quiet, except for the soft rumble of Nadine's old Honda and the occasional turn signal click. My fingers tapped against the folder on my lap. Lorraine's will, the forged deed copies, and Nadine's report. Everything was there, yet my stomach was tangled like fishing wire. Murray Conklin's office was a squat brick building nestled between a bakery and a shuttered pharmacy, the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you needed it. Inside, the walls were lined with books worn thin from real use. A bronze plaque on the desk read, Murray Conklin, Civil Litigation, and beside it sat the man himself, hunched in a leather chair that groaned when he leaned forward. Nadine introduced us, and he gave me a quick once-over. "You're the one with the $50 eviction story," he said, not unkindly. "Go ahead, start from the beginning." I laid it out plain, the party, the envelope, the forged deed, the will Lorraine wrote in her own hand. Murray didn't interrupt, just scribbled notes and asked a question now and then. "When did your wife pass?" 14 months ago. "And when was this new deed recorded?" "About 6 weeks after." His brow furrowed. "You remember signing anything?" "I signed something, but I didn't read it. My son said it was to help with property tax restructuring." He snorted. "Hell of a restructure." He reached across the desk, took the will from the folder, and studied it closely. His fingers traced Lorraine's slanted cursive. "Did she write this in front of anyone?" "She always wrote in her journal at the kitchen table. I'd bet anything she did it alone." Murray nodded. "Still counts in Michigan, long as there's no evidence of coercion." Hope stirred like a cautious flame inside my chest. "Her name's on the title before this mess?" he asked. "It was ours. Joint ownership." He leaned back, cracking his knuckles. "Then unless the will's invalidated, your son can't legally claim sole ownership without contesting her bequest. And if that deed's forged, we've got bigger leverage than I thought." A silence settled over the room, heavy and meaningful. I exhaled through my nose, for the first time in weeks without dread choking it. "You've got a real shot here, Weldon," he said, voice dropping low. "And your son's neck is on the line if this ends up in court." The tension that had wrapped around me since that awful birthday began to loosen. I nodded, not triumphantly, but with quiet affirmation. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't crazy. I was wronged. Just then, Murray's assistant, a wiry woman with smart eyes, knocked and entered. "This came by courier, for Mr. Ray." She handed over an envelope, thick, official, and threatening just by the weight of it. Murray slid it open with his pen and scanned the pages. He chuckled darkly. "Travis's attorney claims you've been harassing him and his real estate agent, threatens to sue for defamation and intentional distress." He looked up at me with a smirk. Typical bully tactic. Push hard until someone pushes back. I read the letter silently. The arrogance practically dripped from the page. Legalese trying to mask fear. I folded it neatly and slid it back into the envelope. "He's not ready for the old man to fight back," I muttered. Murray tapped his pen against the desk. "Let's draft a reply. We'll state our intention to file a civil fraud case and request an injunction to block the sale." Nadine leaned in. "We'll attach the will and the forensic report." I looked between them, two people who didn't owe me a damn thing, yet here they were. For the first time in this whole nightmare, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. I signed the paperwork. Murray slid across the desk with a pen that didn't shake in my hand. "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's restoration." Murray nodded once. "That's the right word." We left the office with the reply letter already in motion. Nadine offered to drive me back, but I declined. I wanted to walk, let my thoughts catch up. The sky was overcast. The wind had a bit more bite than I expected. My coat flapped open as I crossed the parking lot and turned onto the sidewalk. That evening, while I was reheating soup in Russell's microwave, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hit play on the voicemail. Travis's voice, clipped and cold. "You really want to go to war, old man? You won't win." I stared at the wall for a moment, the plastic spoon frozen in my hand. Then, quietly, I answered into the silence of the basement. War is all I have left. The courthouse smelled like old wood and new fear. Nadine parked her car along the curb, and we both sat there for a moment before getting out. The Detroit County Civil Court stood tall and gray, a box of glass and concrete surrounded by trimmed hedges and uniformed officers. I adjusted my jacket, corduroy, not quite formal, but the best I owned, and followed Nadine up the steps. It was my first time suing someone, let alone my own son. Inside, the air was dry and cool. People milled about in pressed suits, tapping at phones, juggling briefcases. I felt like a scarecrow in a banker's parade. Murray met us at the end of the hall, holding a thin folder in his hands. "Here it is," he said, tapping the manila cover with a thick finger. "Full civil complaint, fraud, forged deed, undue influence. We're leading with Lorraine's will." He handed the folder to me like it weighed nothing, but my arms shook. "You want me to file it?" He nodded. "This is your house, your fight. You walk it in." So I walked it in. The clerk behind the glass, young, efficient, maybe early 30s, guided me step by step. She stamped the documents and slid a receipt under the glass. "It's official," she said, with a small smile. "You're the plaintiff now." I looked down at the stamped paper. It didn't feel victorious. It felt solemn, like burying something sacred. "I've never sued anyone in my life," I whispered. Nadine placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then you're long overdue." Afterward, we stopped at a diner with cracked leather booths and coffee that tasted like burnt hope. It was one of those places where the waitress calls you hun no matter your age. "To not backing down," Nadine said, raising her coffee cup. I clinked mine to hers, barely sipping. The bitterness matched my stomach. "What now?" I asked. "Summons gets served. They'll have to respond. We wait for court dates. Murray's prepping discovery. And I'm pulling together a complaint about the forged power of attorney Travis used." I stared out the window. A man pushed a stroller across the street. His kid pointed at pigeons and squealed. "I don't hate him," I said quietly. "I still love my son." "That doesn't mean you let him ruin you," she replied. "Love doesn't mean surrender." I nodded, lips pressed tight. Lorraine used to say something like that. Back home, just past noon, my phone buzzed. Then again, then again. I checked the screen. Group texts, Facebook tags, emails, one after another. Screenshots poured in. Friends, neighbors, even an old bowling buddy from Traverse City. Travis had posted something on Facebook. His words hit harder than any punch. "Sad to see my father being manipulated in his old age. For those who know him, you've seen the decline. I tried to protect him. Now he's trying to sue me over a house he doesn't even remember signing over. Please keep him in your prayers." There was a photo attached. Me, in a hospital bed from months ago. After a minor surgery. Nothing serious. Eyes closed. Wires on my arm. He used it like proof. Like I was already gone. I stared at the screen as my pulse pounded. My cheeks flushed. A bitterness bloomed in my chest, colder than rage. "He wants to destroy what I have left," I said aloud. "Not just the house, my name." Nadine called a few minutes later. She'd seen the post. "You want to respond publicly?" she asked. "No," I said. "Let the court speak. Let him run his mouth." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my old spiral journal. Lorraine gave it to me 15 years ago, when I thought I might write a book one day. Instead, it held recipes, garage measurements, a few love notes she slipped in between pages. Today, I wrote something different. When truth is quiet, lies scream louder, but justice has better ears. I closed the book and stepped out to the front porch. The air was still. The wind had gone somewhere else. A kid rode by on a scooter, waving at me. I waved back. The porch boards creaked beneath my feet. I used to repair them every spring, but no one noticed. That was okay. Lorraine used to say the things we do quietly are the most important. The next morning, a cream envelope arrived in the mail. Bold black letters, Detroit Civil Court. I tore it open carefully. Inside, a date was printed in the middle of the page, 2 weeks. 2 weeks until I stand in front of a judge and tell them my son took everything from me. I circled the date in red ink and set the letter on the mantel beside Lorraine's will. "If he wants to fight dirty," I said, voice low and steady, "I'll fight with everything clean I've got." The light in Murray's office flickered a little as Nadine and I sifted through another stack of emails and folded documents. My hands moved slower than usual, stiff with the weight of years and bitterness, but my mind had never been sharper. I wasn't just reliving a betrayal anymore. I was building a response. Murray leaned back in his creaky leather chair, chewing the end of a pen. "This notarization date's off by 2 months," he muttered, passing the paper to Nadine. She peered at it closely, then clicked open her laptop. And that email from Travis's so-called advisor? It came from a Gmail account, not a firm. That could help prove he orchestrated this himself. We were building a wall, email headers, bank records, estate transfers, brick by brick. The more we uncovered, the less alone I felt. Still, it stung knowing my own son had created this maze, this minefield. "The notary got back to me this morning," Nadine added, eyes sharp. "She confirmed she never met you in person, said she only talked to Travis, by phone." My chest tightened. I didn't want to believe it, but every piece pointed to the same truth. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft, dressed in family clothing. Later that day, I met Doug at the diner across from the old VFW hall. He'd aged since I'd last seen him, more white in his beard, a deeper bend to his back, but his handshake was still strong, still steady. He slid into the booth across from me. "So you're finally going after him?" I nodded. "Never thought I'd have to. But here we are." Doug stirred his coffee. "You remember that night he came to your old place alone, few months after Lorraine passed? He said, 'Plain as day, I'll get him out eventually.' Thought it was just grief talk at the time." My stomach twisted. "You'd testify to that?" "Hell yes," he said without hesitation. "We met 2 other old-timers that afternoon at the community center, guys I hadn't seen since barbecues and car shows. They remembered seeing Travis sell my workshop tools at a yard sale. I hadn't even realized they were gone. The betrayal ran deeper than I thought. Funny how people not bound by blood often hold you up better than those who share your name." The next morning, I drove out to visit Clara, my cousin on my mother's side. We used to be close. Or at least I thought so. I needed her. She'd been there when Lorraine passed and had seen Travis handling the estate papers. She welcomed me with a hug and herbal tea. We sat in her garden, surrounded by overgrown rose bushes and wind chimes. "I just need you to confirm what you saw," I told her gently. "That I didn't know what I was signing back then." Clara looked down at her cup. "You know I love you, Weldon, but Travis is like a son to me." The air grew colder. "I'm not asking you to lie," I said. She nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." But that night, as I passed her living room to get my coat, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up. Voicemail on speaker. "I did what you asked, Travis," her voice said faintly. "But I can't guarantee he won't figure it out." I froze. She hadn't even noticed I was still inside. I left without a word. The betrayal burned hotter than the coffee she served. Back at the house, I sat in the dark with Nadine and Doug. We spread out the documents, notes, and evidence again, crossing Clara's name off the witness list. "She made her choice," I said. Nadine nodded. "We still have enough, and the court date's coming," Doug added. "We don't need everyone, just the truth." Murray dropped by with a flash drive and a grin. "Here's that notary's video statement. Judge'll love this." I jotted a final line in my journal that night. "The more they try to bury me, the more I remember I'm still breathing." The mail arrived early the next morning. Inside was a formal motion. Travis had filed to dismiss the case. Murray scanned the document and chuckled. "That means he's scared." I stepped outside and walked past the old Chevy pickup Travis had sold behind my back. It was parked in my driveway now. I'd tracked it down and bought it back 2 weeks ago, quietly. I opened the back toolbox where I used to keep oil rags and duct tape. Instead, there was one item, a worn-out leather-bound Bible Lorraine gave me on our 20th anniversary. I took it out, dusted it off, and whispered, "He wants a war." He's forgetting who taught him how to stand. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled of stale coffee and nerves. I adjusted my collar for the 3rd time. Nadine stood beside me, flipping through her neatly tabbed binder like it was a weapon. Murray leaned against the wall, arms crossed, calm as always. "Don't let the suit fool you," he said, glancing toward the double doors. "Your son's about to be very uncomfortable." Inside, Travis already sat at the plaintiff's table, his charcoal gray suit perfectly pressed, his hair gelled and swept back like he was auditioning for a political ad. Clara was behind him, perched straight-backed and wide-eyed in the gallery, avoiding my eyes. I hadn't seen her since she betrayed me. She looked everywhere but at me. The bailiff called court into session. Everyone rose. Judge Messner entered, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense posture and tired, intelligent eyes. She sat down, scanned the docket, and nodded toward Travis's lawyer. "You may begin." "He did. Oh, he did. Your Honor," the man began with theatrical concern. "My client took steps to intervene when his father, Mr. Weldon Ray, began exhibiting signs of cognitive decline. There were multiple instances documented of Weldon misplacing important documents, forgetting mortgage payments, even accusing family members of theft without basis." I clenched my jaw. "Mr. Menendez only sought to protect the family estate," the attorney continued smoothly, "acting in accordance with what he believed to be his late mother's wishes and in the best interests of his father." My hands gripped the bench. Nadine placed hers gently over mine. "He'll bury himself," she whispered. Travis took the stand. Under oath, he painted a portrait of a confused old man, hurt by grief and incapable of financial responsibility. "I tried to help him," he said. "He wasn't sleeping. He accused me of hiding things that didn't exist. He was erratic. And I did what I thought a good son should." A good son. That phrase hit like a slap. The judge nodded. "Defense?" Murray stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Ray would like to testify." I walked slowly to the stand. My legs felt like iron bars, heavy and stiff, but my spine straightened the moment I saw Travis looking smug. I looked away from him. I focused on the judge. "My name is Weldon Ray. I'm 70 years old. I served in the U.S. Army. I worked 38 years as a mechanic. I've been married, widowed, and as of 2 years ago, evicted from the house I built with my wife's own hands." I reached into my jacket and produced my journal, Lorraine's handwriting still tucked inside the cover. The court clerk took it and passed it to the judge. "I didn't know I'd signed away my house. I trusted my son. He came to me after my wife's funeral. Said he needed documents to protect the house, to protect us. I didn't read them. I trusted him." My voice cracked. I didn't apologize for it. "I was handed $50 in an envelope on my 70th birthday," I said. "Told to start a new chapter. No suitcase. No goodbye. I walked to the curb holding that envelope like a fool." I paused. Let it sit. Even Travis had gone still. Murray called our first witness, Doug, my old friend and retired sheriff. Doug raised his hand, swore in, and spoke clearly. "I ran into Travis at a barbecue about a week before Mr. Ray's birthday. He laughed, said he was finally getting the house to himself, said the old man wouldn't see it coming." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Murray handed Judge Messner a notarized statement from the notary, confirming she had never witnessed me sign anything in person. Nadine had dug up the expired notary license herself. And then, just as we were wrapping up, Clara stood. "He's twisting everything." The judge banged her gavel. "Ma'am, sit down or you will be removed." Clara stared at me, eyes burning. "You always played victim. Weldon. Travis needed that house. You don't need it anymore." I didn't respond right away. I turned slowly toward her. My voice barely left my throat, but it echoed louder than a scream. "You chose your side, Clara, and it wasn't the truth." She sat down. Judge Messner waited for silence to return. Then, in a firm, clear tone, she spoke. "There is enough evidence here to proceed with a full hearing. All asset transfers relating to the property are hereby frozen until the hearing date." I didn't smile. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, letting the moment sink in. I wasn't vindicated, not yet, but I was no longer being ignored. As the courtroom emptied, I saw Travis pacing in the hallway, arguing with his lawyer, arms flailing like a man who knew the walls were closing in. I walked past without stopping, outside, on the steps. Nadine adjusted her coat. "You did good, Weldon." I didn't look back. I just whispered, "Now let's show them everything." I didn't walk through the front door of my house that evening. I stepped into it like a stranger reclaiming a crime scene. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't sneaking around or feeling like an intruder. And yet, something felt wrong. Boxes lined the hallway, labeled with Sharpie in Travis's handwriting: master bedroom, office, kitchen essentials. One sat half open with a stack of neatly folded shirts. In the living room, a USPS form confirmed a change of address request dated 5 days before the court hearing. A light bill in Travis's name lay unopened on the dining table. He'd already planned to move in before I ever took the stand. My phone rang. It was Nadine. "He thought he'd win before you even testified," she said, her voice tight with controlled rage. He was ready to walk in with his boxes before the judge even ruled. I didn't respond. I just stared at the living room that used to be filled with Lorraine's scent and my son's laughter, now just shadows of entitlement. That night, Nadine came over with a dusty plastic bin she'd found in my garage weeks ago. "You forgot about this," she said, placing it on the table with a dull thud. Inside were yellowed documents, old legal correspondence, power of attorney forms, and property deeds. I barely remembered any of it, but as we sifted through them, something caught Nadine's eye. "This isn't your signature," she said, holding up a copy of a deed transfer. It looked like mine, at first glance, but the way the R curved in Ray, it was wrong. The ink tone was inconsistent, like it had been layered on twice. We compared 5 documents. 3 had signatures. All 3 were wrong, just enough to fool the casual observer. But side by side, the deception bled through. Doug arrived an hour later. He adjusted his reading glasses and leaned over the table. "Seen this before?" he muttered. "Forgery done with confidence. Probably scanned and printed from another document, then traced or altered slightly." I handed him a Ziploc bag. "Get this to the sheriff's office. Chain of custody starts now." The next morning, I drove to the other end of the neighborhood and knocked on the door of Mrs. Goldstein, my old neighbor. She was in her 80s now, but sharp as a tack. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," she smiled. "I was wondering when you'd come back around." I told her about Clara, my cousin, and asked if she remembered anything about her visits. She nodded, thoughtful. "She came by quite a bit last spring, always acting hush-hush. Once she brought a laptop, stayed in her car on the phone for over an hour." Mrs. Goldstein's voice dropped. "She said something odd once. I overheard her talking to someone on the porch, said, 'Once the old man's out, we're set.' Travis already paid the retainer." I swallowed hard. "You're sure?" she nodded. "Clear as the day." I remember thinking, retainer for what? That was all I needed. Back home, I picked up the phone and called Judge Messner's office. To my surprise, she came on the line herself. I explained what we'd found, the fake signatures, the backdated receipts, the conversations Clara had with my neighbor. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said firmly, "If you can verify those forgeries, Mr. Ray, you're not just fighting for your house anymore. You're exposing felony-level fraud." Doug had already taken the forged documents to the county office. Nadine was working on a sworn affidavit from Mrs. Goldstein. We weren't just building a case. We were preparing a takedown. Nadine pulled me aside that evening. "Keep everything locked up. Don't let Travis know what we've found. Not yet." I nodded. "I want him walking in blind." That night, I changed every lock on the house. I moved the important documents into the fireproof box Lorraine once used for birth certificates and insurance. Then I called Nadine to review the draft of her emergency motion to protect the property. No contact, no access, no sale. Before bed, I left Travis a voicemail. "I hope you packed light," I said flatly. "You're not moving anywhere near this house again." The next morning, Nadine looked at me across the kitchen table. Her eyes were sharper than I'd ever seen them. "If we do this right," she whispered, "your son might not just lose the house. He might lose his freedom." I looked out the window at the garden Lorraine once planted. The roses were still there. Stubborn things, just starting to bloom again, and so was I. The house was unusually quiet that Saturday morning. Light streamed in through the kitchen blinds, striping the table where I sat with a mug of lukewarm coffee and a folder full of evidence that had, over the last few weeks, become both sword and shield. My fingers traced the edges of Lorraine's will, her handwriting still so vivid, like she'd penned it only yesterday. On speakerphone, Nadine was walking me through the next filing steps. "We'll send the motion for emergency injunction Monday morning. First thing," she said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see. "Good. Let's hit them before they hit us," she chuckled dryly. "You're starting to sound like Murray." But before I could reply, the doorbell rang. Once, firm, like it belonged there. I stood, the old bones creaking louder than the floorboards, and pulled open the door. There he was, Travis, dressed in a crisp blazer, too polished for a Saturday. He had a manila folder in one hand and that same smug tilt to his chin he wore the day he handed me $50. I didn't say a word, just stepped aside. He walked in without invitation, brushing past me like he still owned the place. "You're up early," he said, like this was a visit between father and son. "You're not here to chat," I answered flatly. He walked straight to the kitchen table, dropped the folder with a loud slap. "I'm here to give you a final out before this thing gets public." I raised an eyebrow. He flipped the folder open and shoved a single-page document across the table toward me. "Statement of voluntary property transfer. You sign this, and we drop the lawsuit. No more courtroom drama, no more lawyers." "And if I don't?" I asked, still standing. He pulled out a second page. "I've already filed a petition for emergency guardianship. Based on declining mental capacity, harassment claims, and medical history." "You mean the flu I had 6 months ago?" He smirked. "You had confusion listed on the chart. We both know judges don't read the fine print." My hand, resting on the table edge, slid slightly to the right, where my phone was face down and already recording. "You can either sign that paper," he said, tapping it, "or wait for a court-appointed stranger to tell you where to live." The kitchen felt suddenly smaller, tighter, but I didn't flinch. "What about your lies, Travis?" He shrugged. "They're only lies if someone can prove them." Before I could respond, the sound of the sliding glass door at the back of the house opening made both our heads turn. Clara stepped inside, wearing that sheepish look she always used when she needed forgiveness. Her eyes bounced from me to Travis. "I just stopped by to—" she began. "You've been here." I cut her off. "He let you in the back way." She said nothing, just smiled weakly. "I just want peace, Daddy. That's all." She walked over and placed her phone on the table, screen down. But as she moved her hand away, the light of the recording icon flashed, barely visible. I said nothing. Let her sit beside Travis like some awkward tag-along. And still, I said nothing. Just then, the front door opened without knocking. Doug, the man, had impeccable timing. He stepped inside and looked directly at me. "We've got a problem," he said. I motioned to the hallway. We stepped away from Travis and Clara, who were busy whispering. Doug pulled out his own phone and played a clipped audio file. It was my voice, or a version of it, saying, "We'll fake it to win. No one will know." I nearly choked. "That's not me," I said. "It's you. Edited," Doug said. "Clara sent this to the court. We intercepted the metadata. It's doctored. Badly." I gritted my teeth. "Judge Messner? I called her. She's not making any rulings yet, but she said you'll need rock-solid witnesses at the full hearing." I nodded. Doug added, "Nadine has porch camera footage. Shows Travis letting Clara in through the side gate 20 minutes before she arrived." It was all unraveling now, for them, not me. We walked back into the kitchen. Travis leaned back in the chair, relaxed, cocky. Clara sipped water from the fridge like she still belonged. I walked around the table, stood behind Travis, and dropped a printout in front of him. Security logs, video footage, and witness statements being filed Monday morning. He looked down at the paper. Doug stepped forward. "Next time you set foot on this property," Doug said, "you'd better bring a badge or be ready for cuffs." Travis stood, slow, seething. "This isn't over, old man." Clara quietly pocketed her phone and backed away. She didn't even meet my eyes. As they left, I leaned against the counter and let the silence settle. Nadine's voice came through the still open call on the speaker. "Everything okay?" I looked down at the table, at the unsigned document. the audio file still on Doug's screen, the folder Travis had slammed. "Get ready," I said, eyes hard. "We're not playing defense anymore." I sat alone in my dim home office, sunlight filtering through the blinds and tracing golden lines across boxes I hadn't touched in years. Dust hovered in the air like memories refusing to settle. The manila folders on my desk were worn, edges curled, some pages yellowed, a far cry from the crisp lies my son had submitted to the court. Nadine's knock broke the silence. She stepped in with a folder clutched tight under her arm. Her hair was pulled back, eyes sharp. "I found something," she said, setting the files down in front of me. "The will Travis gave the court. The handwriting's different. The signature, too." "It's a copy, not an original. And the date? It doesn't align with Lorraine's known medical timeline." I leaned in, heart racing but face still. "You're saying it might not be the only will?" "I think," she replied, "your wife made another one, later, and I think Clara helped make sure no one saw it." 2 hours later, Doug and I pulled into the parking lot of a rural bank outside of town. It was the same branch Lorraine had used for decades. Clara once told me her deposit box only held old bonds and birthday cards. Nothing of value. I'd believed her. Shame on me. The manager remembered Lorraine. "Of course. Mr. Ray," she said, leading us to the back. Box 147. The key trembled in my hand as I turned the lock. Doug stood behind me, arms folded, silent and steady. Inside the box sat 2 faded envelopes in a blue leather folder. I opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten will, notarized, clear, firm, Lorraine's voice in ink. She had amended everything, disinheriting both Travis and Clara. Every line was deliberate. She'd added a paragraph near the bottom. "This version supersedes all previous versions. I've grown wiser about trust." My knees weakened. Doug grabbed my arm and steadied me. "Get that to Nadine," he said. "Now." Back home, Nadine took one look and said, "This changes everything." She flipped through it, cross-referencing dates and witnesses. "It's 8 months newer than the version Travis submitted, and this one actually holds up." I felt the grief settle in again, not the sting of betrayal, but the ache of knowing Lorraine saw it coming and tried to stop it. A memory crashed into me, the week before her stroke. I remembered hearing her whisper on the phone with Clara. I was in the kitchen, half asleep in my recliner. "Promise me you'll keep Dad out of this," Lorraine had said. Clara's voice was low but firm. "Don't worry. I'll handle it." I didn't understand then. I do now. By nightfall, we'd scanned the will and stored physical copies in 3 places, one with Doug, one in Nadine's office, and the original in a new fireproof box under my bed. Doug made a call to his old friend, Deputy Sheriff Leake, to start the official chain of custody. "This needs to hold up in court," Doug told him. "No room for error." I sat at my desk and recorded a video message, speaking directly into the camera. My voice didn't shake. "My name is Weldon Ray. My wife, Lorraine, left this world with more wisdom than most people ever gain. She knew her family, the good and the bad. This document is her truth, and I will see it honored." I closed the laptop. For the first time in weeks, I felt like a man standing in his own house again, not a trespasser in his past. Before we turned in, Nadine spoke quietly. "Tomorrow, we file an emergency injunction with Judge Messner. We request that all proceedings pause until this will is fully examined. Travis won't see this coming." I nodded, slipping the fireproof box under my bed. "This time," I said, "we're not just proving the truth, we're burning the lies down." Then, as I turned out the light, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. But I knew who it was. "Clara, don't go through with this. You'll regret it." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I turned it off and whispered, "Not this time." The courtroom was colder than usual, or maybe it was just me. I sat there in the front row, spine straight despite the weight of what this day meant. Nadine sat beside me, legal folders in hand, calm but focused. Doug stood behind us like an old oak tree, steady, immovable. Across the aisle, Travis lounged in his chair like he owned the place, flashing that smug grin he always wore when he thought he had the upper hand. Clara sat behind him, eyes red but defiant, like someone who knew the cards in her hand were finally running out. Judge Messner entered promptly. Sharp eyes, iron voice. Nadine stood first. Your Honor, we are submitting into evidence the original, notarized will of Lorraine Ray, found in a sealed bank box, with signed chain of custody by Deputy Leake. She laid it on the table like a thunderclap. Clara was called to the stand. At first, she tried to dance around the truth. I only wanted to protect the family, but Nadine was merciless in her precision. Did you or did you not access the safety deposit box 2 months after Lorraine's death? Clara hesitated. Yes, but did you inform Weldon Ray of its contents? No. Did you tell him the will was missing? Silence. Ms. Ray, did you lie to this court, to your cousin, and help falsify documents with your godson? Clara's face crumpled. Yes, she whispered. I did. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge Messner leaned forward. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. The gavel came down like a sledgehammer. This court finds that the previous deed transfer was based on falsified documents and concealed testimony. The valid, notarized will of Lorraine Ray will be upheld. Full ownership of the estate and property is returned to Mr. Weldon Ray. Travis jumped up. This is outrageous. Mr. Menendez, the judge snapped. Sit down or be held in contempt. He didn't sit fast enough. Security escorted him out, muttering curses I'd heard too many times before. Clara didn't move. She just sat there, eyes vacant. I felt, not triumph, not joy, just stillness. I had my name back, my home back, my dignity intact. Outside, Clara rushed up behind me. Weldon, wait, please. I turned slowly. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I didn't want it to end like this. I thought I could fix it before. I raised my hand. No, you thought I'd stay silent forever. And I almost did, but silence isn't peace. Clara, it's just a prison when someone else holds the key. Doug stepped between us, guiding me away. I didn't look back. Later that evening, I sat on the back porch with Doug, watching the golden sun bleed into the horizon. The air was warm. The breeze smelled faintly of grass and old lilacs. I never wanted any of this, I said softly. Not a courtroom, not lawyers, just a place to be left alone, to remember Lorraine, to drink my coffee in peace. Doug chuckled. You earned more than peace, Dad. You earned back your dignity. I didn't reply. I just nodded and watched a squirrel scurry along the fence, as if none of this had ever happened. Before the light faded, I went inside and recorded one final video. It wasn't for the court. It wasn't for Travis or Clara. It was for the men like me, the ones who've been cast out by the very people they once carried on their shoulders. If they tell you to stay quiet, remember, silence isn't surrender, it's preparation. When they take everything, they expect you to disappear. But sometimes, standing up is the only way to stay whole. I looked into the lens, gave a single nod, and hit stop. Then I walked out to the porch again, letting the door swing gently shut behind me. The light lingered a moment longer, golden, peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe. I was home,